All right. So with that, let me start by some basic introductions. I'm your host. My name is Mahesh Singh, and I'm co-founder and senior vice president of product at Digite, the makers of Swift-Kanban. And our main speaker today is Dr. Masa K Maeda, who is head of Value Nova Consulting. Dr. Masa is a very recognized thought leader and speaker in the Agile and Kanban world, and many of you may have already seen him or heard him speak in a variety of conferences and lean agile sessions. He has been working in the IT industry for a number of years, and especially does consulting in the Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America as well as in Europe. He is actually one of the few Kanban trainer coaches that is accredited by the Lean Kanban University worldwide, and he's also the creator of the Lean Value Innovation, and is currently writing a book on that subject. He's the founder and principal consultant of Value Nova, which is a lean agile coaching and training institute, training business. He's a senior consultant with the Qatar Consortium, their agile practice. He's also the founder of the Bay Area Limited Web Society, and he's done a number of sessions, not only with the Bay Area Limited Web Society, but also with the local Agile and PMI chapters. Previously, Masa worked with David J. Anderson, and worked with him for a number of years, consulting on Lean and Kanban around the world. So with that, let me go ahead and hand over. Let me first of all do a quick introduction to Digite, and then I will hand over control to Masa. Just a quick overview. Digite itself, we are a pioneer in web-based collaborative products and solutions for geographic distributed teams. We are headquartered in Mountain View, California, and have over 250,000 users across the world. Our main products really cover Lean Kanban, Agile ALM, and project portfolio management products. And Swift-Kanban is our flagship Lean Kanban product. We have got a number of commendations and references, including by Gartner, which covered us in their 2010 ALM Market Scope report. They don't yet have a Magic Quadrant for that space. Just a quick introduction to Swift-Kanban. Basically, it is one of the top Lean Kanban tools in the market today, with guidance from global thought leaders such as Masa and David Anderson, who is the advisor to Digite. It is really ideal for both software and IT as well as non-IT functions such as HR, marketing, sales, claims processing, and these are just some of the areas that are that Swift-Kanban is already being used by, and our hope is that more and more people will be able to use it beyond just the software and IT with help from Masa based on today's talk, and how Kanban can help beyond software and IT. So Kanban itself makes it very easy for distributed teams and functions to do all of the things that you would typically want to do as part of a Kanban implementation, such as visualizing flow of work, limiting work in progress, collaborating visually, automatically gathering performance metrics, and gradually evolve and improve. One of the key things that differentiates Swift-Kanban is that it's based on a very powerful platform that combines high configurability with ease of use, and that's really critical to most Kanban teams that are adopting Kanban. They really want to be able to map their own processes on the Kanban board and be able to replicate their process so that they can really start to improve from there, and that's really important, that they should be able to configure it and at the same time find it easy to use. It's available both as SaaS and on-premise license, and there is a 30-day free trial that's available. And just a quick view at some of the customers that we have, and as you can see here, we have a lot of customers in the Americas, in Europe, and around the world. So with that, let me go ahead and hand over control to Masa. And Masa, you are on.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. Well, welcome everybody. I'm very glad to be here with you. So let's get started. Okay, so the wheel was originally invented as a mechanism to make it easier to move things around. Nonetheless, as time has passed by, more new and entirely unforeseen applications to the wheel have, surfaced. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot more applications to the wheel that all of us together could, list, which is something very important to consider. If we look also at a concept such as the Turing machine, for those of you familiar with computer science, for those of you who are not, Turing machine was a theoretical concept that was developed by Alan Turing back in the 30s, in which basically what he explained was the concept of a universal machine. And this is a concept that was very powerful and actually make it easier to understand and to see that we can use computers and software to do any kind of calculation or to develop any kind of application. And this is very important because what we have is a simple concept that can go beyond what can be foreseen within the initial applications of that same concept or of that same invention. So it seems to be that the same case is what we have with Kanban. It's a very simple concept. It was born originally within a product maintenance team in Microsoft, and it has been expanding beyond what was originally conceived. And up to this point, we really don't know how far it's going to go. So what we had originally was, a simple board that shows or reflects the actual process that we have, which is an important aspect. It's not an idealization of the process, it's the actual process. And that high level of visualization actually allows us to start doing some really wonderful things. How wonderful those things can be, well, if we look, for example, at the same case of Microsoft, which was, when Kanban was first developed, it was at that time not as polished and as mature as it is today. But even then, the results were amazing. So if we look, for example, at the leftmost part of this chart, what we see is that we have two different lines. The one is a red one, the other one is a blue one. And before Kanban was developed, this particular team operated at level 5 of CMMI, which is the maximum level of maturity under that model, which means this team actually was, from that standpoint, highly effective and had a good level of quality. Nonetheless, the deliveries were only 17 every 155 days in average. And in 5 fiscal quarters, which is by December of 2005, they were able to deliver 45 deliveries to the customer in only 25 days in average, at about half the cost. So that's actually a very significant improvement. So okay, that's cool, but what else can happen, right? So the important thing is, can we use it somewhere else? And we can. And the reasons for that are, we could say number one is because it limits the amount of work in progress. This is something very important. We are so used in pretty much any kind of activity that we do, not only professionally, but in our daily lives, to thinking that the more we can do simultaneously, the more effective we are. And that isn't necessarily so. And it has actually been proven that it isn't so. And one way to think about this is just try to eat and drink at the same time, right? Try to put some food in your mouth and then try to drink and do it both at the same time, and it's going to be challenging. Now, imagine trying to do more than just those two activities at the same time. It's not easy, and actually, it doesn't necessarily make us more effective in terms of we will be able to finish our meal sooner, and actually, let's talk about enjoying it, right? It will be difficult to have, the main dish and dessert at the same time. So this applies in every other kind of activity that we do. So what we need to do is make sure that we limit the amount of work that we're doing at each stage of our process in such a way that the end result is the best possible flow of value. So the objective shouldn't be to have the highest amount or the highest level of performance at each stage of the process. What we want to do is to balance the overall process in such a way that one activity or one ticket or one task flows from left to right, of course, in this case, indicating that our process is visualized as a set of steps that go from left to right. We want to make sure that that flow is as efficient as possible without sacrificing quality. And that's very important. We have to make sure that the quality is the best possible, meaning it has to be at least the quality that the customer wants. And that's very important. So what we have here in this board is we have a set of steps, A, B, C, D, and E, and some of those steps have a number between parentheses, and that number is what we call or work in progress. This number indicates the maximum amount that we can have at that step of the process at a given time. It doesn't say that we have to always have that amount of work. It only says the most that we can have. And what this is going to do is, okay, we don't necessarily want to have the maximum efficiency at a given place, but what we want to do is imagine that you're using an equalizer, a sound equalizer. You have the different dials, different knobs for your equalizer, and you change them depending on the kind of music, depending on the specific song. You change the settings of that equalizer to get the best possible sound. You don't put all the dials at the very top or at the very bottom of the range they have. It's the same here. So what you want to do is to do that, just to set them up in a way that you get the best possible output. Another reason why this works is because it is highly visual. So, for example, what we have in this slide is we have a set of steps. These steps, because they show my real process, they don't show an ideal process or an entirely abstract process that steps that have nothing to do with my real process, then it's better. I mean, if I know exactly what it is that I'm doing, then that allows me to have a better understanding of what it is that my process is and what I need to do. And then in addition to that, if some of you are familiar with some other Agile methodologies, Kanban is a lean method, but from some people, it's also mentioned or say that it's an Agile method. So let's be flexible about the terminology. So if we look at other methodologies within the Agile space, typically the cars are one color. In the case of Kanban, we use also colors to differentiate between different kinds of tasks. And this is awesome because let's say, for example, in this case, that I tell you that my yellow cars are regular tasks that we have ongoing in the system. And we say that the green card is a maintenance card, the purple card is something that has to do with, let's say, a business activity, and let's say that the blue one is an activity that has to do with an internal work that we have to do that is apart from the business side, but it's something that is to be done. Then what we can see is, well, since most of my tasks are yellow, and yellow actually, things that have to do with delivering value to customer, then that means that a fairly good amount of work that we're doing has that purpose, and that isn't bad. But what will happen if I told you that the yellow cars are defects that we are dealing with in the system? For example, that the blue cars are actual tasks that deliver value to the customer. Then there will be an immediate reaction, and that reaction is even chemical. It will make people blush or start sweating, or because that amount of information, that clarity, and that high level of visualization helps us understand better what's going on. And it's also an invitation to react and to do something about it. So if the yellow cars were defects, definitely we will be drawn to and motivated to figure out what's wrong, what it is that we are doing or that it is that we're not doing, that we need to change so that those yellow cars become minimal, so that we had a minimum number of defects running through the system. So it's an invitation to improve quality. It also works because, the visualization can be made even richer. So let's say that we're not talking about, again, an application that has to do with software development or IT. Let's say that we're talking about an application for a hospital, or they were actually running a hospital using Kanban, which is not, a way of reality. We actually we started doing some work, with a hospital in Panama, in which we brought to them a proposal in which we displayed in which way Kanban could be used to help them. And the interest of this hospital, in particular, was to begin using Kanban to improve the nurses station to be able to treat patients more effectively. So what we can have is, again, a process in which, let's say, we admit a new patient, then we do the auscultation, there's a diagnosis done, then we do a prescription, and we give a prescription to the patient, and then check out the patient. And what we could do is we could have visualization that has to do with, call depending on different areas. So one visualization could be like the one you're seeing right now on the screen, or it could be something like this. So we have actually the same information on both boards, but one of them makes it even more clear than the other. And Kanban allows us the flexibility to actually be able to do this. We can be as visual and as clear as possible, and we can configure our Kanban board in a way that makes us a lot more efficient. I will say that this board, compared to the other one, will make it a lot easier and a lot quicker for people to be able to look at the board and see what's going on and to be able to start flowing tasks. What is also important to consider is that a process for any kind of application, be an attorney's office, be a university, any kind of application, as we go about applying Kanban and understanding our system, we will begin to mature it. And what that means is that the Kanban board in itself will change over time because it will reflect our reality. It also works because it gives us explicit policies. And those explicit policies allows us to improve the communication. So, for example, if we look at the standard procedure for emergency for treating patients at an emergency room, then what we know is somebody gets into the hospital in critical condition, then there's a set of priorities as to if we're going to triage, how we're going to treat them. And we have, for example, well, first off, we have to make sure that the person has no problems with breathing and there's no cardiac problems. That's the highest priority. If the person has some other kind of problem, that other kind of problem can wait. We treat these ones first because these are the most critical. And then we talk about, hemorrhage and then poisoning and so on. So there's a set process that establishes a discipline that allows us to be much more efficient. In the case of Kanban, we do something similar. And what we can do is establish what is called classes of service. And the class of service can be established also visually, in which we have different cards of different colors for different policies, and that allows us to understand what it is that we're doing. So, for example, in the case of software development and IT, these 4 different classes of service are the ones that are the most standard and more commonly used. But we could use, for example, if we have Kanban for customer portfolio management, then we could have a different set of classes of services. And these ones that I am showing you on the slide are actually real class of service, and these are the ones that I use at my company precisely for this purpose. So I have standard tasks, I have urgent tasks, I have tasks that have an absolute fixed delivery date, something that cannot be changed at all in terms of date. But I also have, and actually I use more commonly the other three than the three on the left, which are third party, which is I have somebody else, you know, a contractor or somebody external to the company who is performing a task. And then I have tasks that are the money makers. So we're actually performing something for a customer, and we're going to be paid for that, you know, for accomplishing that task. And then we have customer-facing activities that are not necessarily paid for, but that have importance of, you know, is something that is bringing some benefit to the customer, and that somehow, you know, is going to bring some benefit to us. And an example of a customer-facing activity will be this webinar. So we're giving a webinar. It's a free webinar, but it's bringing some benefit to us because it's bringing visibility to the company and so on. So it brings some sort of benefit. So it's a task that provides value to the customer and to us, even though it's not necessarily in terms of money. Then if we have a business portfolio management Kanban, then our classes of service could be, for example, you know, business meeting, activities that have to do only with partners and associates of the company, and so on. And then what we do is for each class of service, we establish a policy. And for example, we could say, okay, the policies for our business meeting class of service is, well, number one is we are always going to use cards that have this color. In this case, will be pale green color. And then they have a suggested execution date, which is important. This is not a fixed delivery date card. That means this is not an activity that has to necessarily happen on a specific date, and there's no way to move it around. In this case, it's a business meeting. We could probably reschedule it. So it's a suggested execution date. It has one owner, which means there's only one point of contact with the customer, because we don't want to confuse the customer changing, you know, the owner, and then the customer will get confused as to, hey, do I have to talk to Rick or do I have to talk to Joe? And that's important in terms of, you know, bringing discipline internally and also making, you know, business easier to the eyes of the customer, and so on. So we have a set of policies that we establish, and these policies obviously mature over time. What is important to understand is that these policies need to be thought out carefully. They have to be agreed upon by the stakeholders, and they have to be explicit, meaning they have to be easily available to everybody so that we avoid confusion. And you know, that's one of the reasons why communication is improved. For, say, the partner and associates class of service, well, it's a green card, and it's prioritized based on business strategy needs, and so on. So if, for example, there is something that says, okay, it has an internet scope only, and that means, okay, it's only to be kept internal, and we could say within people who sign up a very specific kind of NDA. Then we know that there's some degree of confidentiality in terms of the activities that take place within this class of service. And then we can have a standard business task, which is, you know, any other activity that is happening. And we also can indicate the behavior within the board in terms of in which way it's going to advance. So we could have two different classes of services, let's say class A and class A and class B. And we could say my class A cards, once they enter my Kanban board or my Kanban system, they're going to be processed in the order in which they arrived. But those are class B, when they get into my Kanban board, are going to take highest priority. What that means is, as soon as I can process a new card at each step of the process, if I have a class B card, that is the first one that I'm going to process. And what that means, that one is going to move faster through the system. And what that means is, of course, you know, the benefit from accomplishing that task is going to happen in less time, for whichever reason, you know, be customer value or some internal economic value to the company. So we can establish that. We can establish the behavior of the card within the board. And we have, for example, for a hospital, and this is actually the set of class of service that we proposed to this hospital in Latin America, was treatment for outpatients, for inpatients, operations tasks in which an operation task was something like, hey, we need to bring more oxygen tanks from the warehouse and things like that. Admin tasks which have to do, with the typical admin work of, logging in a patient, doing whichever changes, checkouts and so on. And the typical emergencies that are always going to occur. It also works because we use models, and those models allows us to have a better understanding of how to improve our system. And a good example of a model is this diagram that we have here about flow. And what it tells us is that if we look at the two straight lines, the one that goes from from up down, top to bottom, the one about density, and then we have the other one that goes from the bottom, the lower left corner, and then starts increasing its speed. And basically what this tells us is that if we have too much density, too much task, too many things going on, then the speed at which we can get things done is going to be not too high. And what that means is that our flow of information or our flow of tasks, the things that we have to accomplish, will go very slow. It's going to be not really that great. But as we decrease the density, then things start speeding up. And a way to look at this, and actually this model suggests this, is traffic in a highway. So if we have too many cars, then the cars move very slowly. It is not necessarily because of the number of cars themselves, but it has to do in reality because of the behavior that happens in the real world as we are driving. And that has to do with the delays between braking and accelerating and momentum and mass and so on. But the real world operates that way. So what we have to understand is even if ideally this wouldn't happen in the real world, it does. So as we decrease density, our flow starts getting better. And the maximum flow isn't as the intersection between both density and speed lines is actually sometime sooner. Where exactly, we don't necessarily know. It depends on the kind of activity. So what this means is that we need to set our limits of work in progress throughout the different columns of our process in such a way that we get as close as possible to that crest, to the maximum flow. But we also have to understand that as time passes by, and we accomplish tasks, that flow is going to isolate between being a little to the left or to the right. And that's okay, as long as we are as close as possible to the optimum flow. And that's what we have to understand. If we understand how this model works, then we should be able to maintain our system at a very nice range of maximum flow. Another aspect that is important to consider is measurement. In Kanban, we rely a lot on scientific management. And this scientific management is not, what we think of as Taylorism from the negative standpoint. It's actually something very, very important and very useful. So what we have here in this diagram, it looks a little bit complex, but it's actually very, very simple and very easy to understand. What we have on the horizontal axis is calendar time, real time, in terms of calendar days or weeks. And then the vertical axis tells us, also in terms of time, it tells us the amount of time, for example, days, that took for a specific task to be accomplished. So in this case, each dot that you see is one task. And what it tells us is that some tasks, for example, take less than 20 days, some of them take between 20 and 80 days, and some of them take more than 80 days to be accomplished. Now, if we can track this down, not only in terms of understanding the behavior in time of that task, but we also have a log of the behavior of that task, then we're going to be able to perform root cause analysis. And every single task is worthy of, doing root cause analysis. But because what we're looking at in this case is improvement, what we do is look at the outliers. And in this case, the outliers are those tasks that are going above that 82-day line that we see on the left side of the chart. So we will analyze the behavior of each task and determine what kind of variation happened in that task that was something that we could have controlled, something that we could have done something about so that that task could have taken less time. Of course, some of those variations can be identified and tackled right away, and if we don't do that, then shame on us. So we should actually go and work on them. But sometimes, we have to look at, once the task is accomplished. And that's not a waste of time, because what can happen is that we can identify some patterns of variation that we can actually attack and potentially eliminate, such that over time, our tasks start taking less and less time. This particular graph is from a real case. This was actually for the BBC Worldwide, and we can see how over time there were improvements, and it was taking less and less time to accomplish, what needed to be done. Of course, not all projects behave exactly in a nice, clean way as this one. But the behavior, if we're doing continuous improvement, if we're doing this right, keeping logs, identifying variation, and tackling those variations, then they should definitely be an improvement in what we're doing, which is reflecting the amount of time. And what that means is that we cannot predict how much sooner we're going to finish what we're doing, how much more quickly we're going to accomplish the tasks that we're doing. In this case was for a particular project, and if we look at the quantification for something that is not necessarily a project that has a beginning and an end, it could be something that is ongoing, the behavior could be a little bit different. But what is important is that if we follow this discipline, then we're definitely going to become a lot more effective. And you can think, for example, if we are talking about a law firm, or we're talking about a university, or we're talking about a construction process or a mining process, which we have also been talking to a mining company, a Canadian mining company, about the possibility of using Kanban to administer mine exploitation. Then this will help us improve that process of, bringing trucks, removing material, and so on, and that will result in, good savings in terms of money. If our system becomes more efficient, then there will be some significant savings. And this is another way to look at this. These diagrams are called cumulative flow diagrams, and what they show us is each color that you see is one step in the process, where the blue color will be tasks that are finished, and the lines that are at the leftmost are the beginning of the process. So what we see is each step of the process, and how thick each color is indicates, how in the vertical axis, how much work is taking place at a given time, and the horizontal axis tells us how much time is taking for that amount of work to be done. And this application is not for a project. This application is for a business and customer portfolio. And this is a very nice chart, because what it shows us, if you observe at the beginning of these charts, the leftmost, let's say the first 25% more or less of those two charts, what we will see is the behavior looks a little bit chaotic on the right one. It goes up and it goes down a little bit. But then if we look at the blue line, what we see is that on both cases it starts going up, it goes flat a little bit, and then it goes up again. But if we look at the rest of the behavior of both charts and we were to overlap them, we will see that there is an interesting behavior in which what we see is that whereas the business portfolio starts going flat at a certain point in time, at about that time, the customer portfolio starts going up. And then when the customer portfolio starts going flat, the business portfolio starts going up. And this is important because for for this particular business, what is happening is that it's a company that those work in different countries, and they have enough staff to satisfy, one or two customers at a time at each country. There is not a large company that cannot satisfy many customers. And what that means is either they are, looking for business, sending proposals, finalizing contracts and so on, or they are actually doing the value-added work towards the customer. And what we see is that Kanban helped this company bring discipline, in which at the beginning it was chaotic. They were doing both kinds of activity at the same time, and later on the discipline was more towards, okay, we're focused on doing either looking for business or satisfying the customer. And that made this company actually be more effective and more efficient. So that quantification helps, bring that behavior and that understanding. And it also works because it has feedback loops. And what this means is that what we want to do is to be able to continuously and in short periods of time, be able to analyze and understand what we're doing. And Kanban allows us to do that. So what we want to do is to be able to look at our system, gather together in front of our Kanban board, analyze what is happening from the information that we have on the board, from the information that we have on our quantification, and analyze what's going on with the customer and so on. And taking all that into account, then be able to come up with a decision and then execute based on that decision. This feedback is very powerful because of all the information that we have together, and also because the decision is taken by the stakeholders. It's not taken just by leadership. And this is very powerful because you have a more complete amount of information to make better decisions. So there is a case which is a customer support company for telecoms, and what they do has nothing to do with software development or with IT. And this company, what we have here is a Kanban board. This is actually the second version of the Kanban board that they had. And what we see here is, if you look at the left side of the board is empty, and there's a little bit more weight towards the end of the board. And this is because this particular company had to process tasks on a daily basis. So this snapshot was taken at around lunchtime, and basically we need to get all the tasks accomplished by the end of the day. What is important to notice here is at the middle column, if we ignore the row at the very bottom, we'll see that the middle column is actually subdivided into columns. There is 3 tasks on the upper half, and there is 5 tasks on the lower half of that column. Digging into details on what was going on with this process, we identified that that lower half of the middle column was an opportunity for improvement. We realized that that was actually basically a bottleneck in the process that they were having, and that was affecting the results that they were bringing to their customers. So digging into detail and understanding what was going on, we made a modification to the Kanban board. And that modification resulted in the following. So if you look at that middle column, what we will see is that this new board actually has a new column. And so we eliminated one of the columns on the left side. We added a new column, and that new column that has, 3 parts, and then the immediate on the left was the original median column, has better detail. So basically, what originally was that small second half of the column now is a full column and an extra space on the column on the left. So that level of detail allowed us to start managing better how the operations were happening in that particular kind of activity. And that allows us to not only visualize, but quantify and communicate more clearly to the different providers how they were performing and how that was actually, contributing to the kind of service that was being given to the customer, which was not the best one that it could be. This allowed the providers to actually say, okay, this is great, thank you, now we understand better in which way what we're doing or not doing is affecting you, but we're not sure how we can improve. And well, the solution was, well, why don't you do something like what we are doing? We're doing this thing called Kanban, and it works this way. And they started doing it, the providers, and there was an immediate benefit. So basically what ended up happening was that this company had an 86% on-time delivery record to customers, and through these changes, they went up to 99% delivery on time. And that's just, in that parameter, but the quality increased. Employees are actually working an average of 1 less hour a day. And their main customers actually assigning them new tasks and new projects. And these companies being able to satisfy that demand without having to increase the number of employees. So the employees are still working at ease. They're not working any extra hours, and they're satisfying much and better. And this is being applied not only within operations, but also in admin work. So for example, this Kanban board is for the same company, and this board is to work towards new contracts that they have. And something that is important to notice here is if you look, for example, at the first two columns, I think it's more evident, you see the number 20 and number 10, which is the amount of work in progress as maximum that they have for those two columns. When they began doing this, those two columns were almost all the time at maximum capacity. So you will almost all the time see 20 tasks on their backlog and 10 tasks on their first contact. And over time, those tickets started becoming less and less, and that was not because they were getting less work to do. It was because they were being more efficient at processing those tasks. So when I visited them and I saw this, I suggested to them to reduce that number, but I asked them to allow me to take this snapshot before they changed those numbers so that we could illustrate this case. So basically what they were able is that thanks to Kanban, they were able to do this more efficiently. And that change of behavior, it was evident. And they were also using it, for example, the director for this company was using it also for his own personal work. Something that caught my attention was that it seems to be that this company has, they kind of like the number 20 because all their boards were beginning with the number 20. And as they mature, they learned that they shouldn't just go and put that number as a magic number, but that they could be more, they could work smarter in terms of determining what that number should be. But that shows us is that it also works because it helps us evolve, it helps us improve, and also the Kanban board in itself improves together with, with you, with your process, with your company, with your organization. These tables illustrate the kind of improvements that happened with this particular company. So again, there were some additional benefits. The motivation increased, the communication within the team became better. There was that identification towards providers I mentioned to you, and they decreased the number of hours per week. But also, I think that the coolest benefit was the fact that their main customer, even though this company is the smallest provider that customer has, the improvements were so good in terms of time and quality that the customer, as contracts with other providers came to an end, instead of renewing the contract with the other providers, they started transferring those new contracts to this company. And this has been ongoing for over a year already. And this company, up to this point, has hired only one extra person. So it's pretty amazing. Now, using an electronic tool is also a high advantage. I think it's obvious to see the advantage of an electronic tool when people are not co-located, because obviously the communication with an electronic tool is much more efficient than having a physical board. But there's some benefits that go beyond that. And one benefit is that, for example, this Kanban board that we're seeing is the one that we use at my company. And we have several boards. This one is the Kanban board for a specific country. We operate on several countries. So for each country, we have a Kanban board in which we have one row on the board for each customer. So we have a different amount of work in progress for each customer, which allows us to be more efficient from that standpoint. At the same time, because it's one common board, then we don't multitask. We know that there is only something that we can do for a specific customer at a given time based on our resources. But also, what we do is that we handle some prioritization in a positional way. So what we do is we are continuously shifting those rows up or down, and the shifting has to do with the more important the customer is at this moment. We're doing more work for a specific customer, and it's important, then that row starts bubbling up, it moves up in the board. So what ends up happening is that at the very bottom of the board, we have customers with for doing very minimum amount of work, or maybe we're not doing anything with them at that moment. This particular board is the full board. The full board has more rows, and if I was to list all of it, you will see that there is less and less cards on each row, and that's also an indication of the amount of activity. Also not necessarily, but it's also an indicator. And for business portfolio, what we have is also being able to see the activities that are happening internal to the company. So this is not customer facing. And what we have is we can see what each partner or each associate or each team is doing. And we have also the prioritization with each card, and you can see it in terms of those the stars that are under each avatar. That you see 3 stars, and some of them are empty or not, and then some of them are in red, and that gives us also a sense of priority. So that allows us to understand what other people are doing, where things are at in the process for that particular task, and that allows us to communicate much better. So we have a nice way to control our internal activities and the activities towards the customers. So Kanban works because helps us to manage change. I mean, that's really the bottom line. It's a very nice, disciplined way, an efficient way to be able to do changes, and that's why Kanban works. It's not a fixed process, is not specific to an area of knowledge or a type of work. It's just a way to help us do what we always do, because all of us every day, we get to work and we're trying to do the best we can, and we're trying to make life easier to us and to our customers. We're always trying to figure out improvements or changes, and Kanban is actually a great mechanism to make that happen. So the conclusions are, Kanban contributes to do that management of change or management of improvement in our organizations in a much better way. And the visualization is amazingly important. There is some other methodologies that also are highly visual, but in all honesty, from what I have seen in my experience, the amount of visualization that we can get with Kanban is not matched by other ones. That doesn't mean the other ones are not good or effective. They are, but I see an extra advantage with using Kanban. Also, the quantification that we do allows us to understand behavioral patterns. And the most important aspect to change is the behavioral change. And in which way does the behavior change? Well, it changes in the measure in which we make the right decisions in terms of the kind of changes that we made to the system. Our value flow is going to improve, again, over time, as we saw it. And what this means is that the overall economy of the system is going to get better. Everything can be translated into money in the end, But we don't necessarily have to do that. We can look at the economy of the system, not only in terms of the financial benefit that we're getting from the customer, but we can look at it in terms of the customer satisfaction, in terms of our teams working better, being happier, working less hours or the same hours, but not being as stressed as they were before, and so on. So the economy of the system is improved in many different ways. And I think that's very important. So, and in the end, of course, as a business, we want to be more successful in terms of making more money, and also in terms of making our customers happier, because that will bring new customers, or, increase the number of recurrent customers that we will have. So that's all I have. I think it's a fairly good time. Usually I try to finish 10 minutes earlier. It's actually 7 minutes before the end of the webinar, but hopefully this gives time for some questions.
Thank you, Masa, and I hope that everybody enjoyed the webinar. Masa, we got some really good questions that have come in, so let me take whatever time we have to ask some of them, which can be answered perhaps in the next 7 minutes. So first of all, a number of you asked that will the slides be available. So yes, the slides will be available for download. We will send you a follow-up email with a link, and both these slides as well as the recording of the webinar will be available. So Masa, the question that has come up before as well is that what is the relationship between Lean and Kanban? Is Kanban a tool to achieve Lean? And how can Kanban help in some of the Lean initiatives in my organization?
Okay, so well, Lean, as you all know, is a foundation. It's a base that we use to be able to improve, what we're doing, and that comes from lean in manufacture, lean in processes, and Lean as we use it in knowledge work as well. So you can just have Lean and apply it in any way that you can figure out, or based on what has been maturing within that field alone. The advantage of using Kanban is that Kanban is an actual method that brings a modus operandi and a mechanism that allows you to apply Lean more easily. So if you understand Lean, you become much more effective using Kanban. If you use Kanban alone, just as the mechanics of Kanban, which is a Kanban system, and then you apply the Kanban method, which is in good measure what I explained to you during the presentation, that helps. But all that other, all those other considerations that you have to do, particularly for all those feedback loops that I mentioned, if you understand Lean, then that's when you can apply it just beautifully. So Kanban is a mechanism in your modus operandi to be able to more effectively apply the discipline of Lean in your organization.
And I think, Masa, this question has come up a number of times. So perhaps we can share some resources, some reading material that people could use to educate themselves on this particular topic.
Sure.
We could do that in the follow-up email. Another question that has come in is, we are an insurance company. What areas in our organization could benefit from Kanban?
Okay, well, actually, with all honesty, you can use Kanban in all the different areas of the organization. I will say, in this case, for an insurance company, obviously the most important aspect for an insurance company in terms of operations, my guess, is that it will be the processing of the claims, for example. So you could have a Kanban board for processing claims, and maybe you will have a different Kanban board for a different kind of claim. So you have one board for cars, one for boats, one for motorcycles, one for renters insurance, and so on. And you can see what the process is to go through the claim, and then you can start improving the way that claim is processed, so that the claim is processed more quickly. It might improve and reduce the number of actions that the customer has to go through, and also the steps that the company in itself goes through to be able to process that. I mean, it occurs to me that will be a nice starting point. But then you can start expanding it to the financial department, to the marketing department, etc. I mean, there's Kanban boards for marketing and other applications that have been used very successfully. But I will say that if you want to do this as something new at the organization, you might want to try something, probably a claim that is not probably the one that is used the less if you want to be in a very gentle way, but it has the visibility so that people notice the improvement. But basically, you can apply it anywhere. I mean, I haven't seen a case in which there is a part of an organization where there is a process in place where it cannot be used, because Kanban visualizes your process.
Absolutely. And I think that's similar to. Sorry, go ahead, Masa.
Sorry, there is another question here from Yavor Nikolov.
Yes, and I was just going to pick up that.
Okay.
Do you have suggestions for efficient tracking of time spent by a person on a particular card in Kanban? People often consider time tracking a burden, but organizations sometimes require tracking of time to control their budgets. Yeah,
well, actually, your quantification tools allow you to track each task, and you can track the amount of time that a task takes at each step of the process. So you can track cycle time for the entire process for each step of the process, and then you can track the entire lead time. Now, in terms of tracking time spent by person, definitely you can do that. I think Swift has a way to do that. I'm not absolutely sure, but you can do that. The question that I will have here, I mean, something that I will actually go through the conversation with the decision makers is, what's the benefit of tracking the time for per person? I mean, what we want to do is improve the value flow. I want to make sure that I can process my tasks in the best possible time with the maximum quality, where quality is more important than time. And if we're being very effective on doing that, then tracking per person kind of loses importance, because what if the person got sick or had a family issue, or some people are just typically a little bit slower than someone else, but that doesn't mean that the person is not valuable. It just, I mean, we cannot expect everybody to work the same way or at the same rhythm. So what we want to do is do what is necessary to change the overall improvement. Of course, if you want to track people just in order to be able to see how you can help them improve, then go ahead. But if the tracking of people is with a purpose of forcing them to be more efficient, or to see who I'm going to, let go, or things like that, it just actually goes against what Lean is all about. So I will say, yes, you can track it, but be careful as to the reason why you are tracking.
All right. Actually, just to add to that, what Masa just said, a number of our customers are IT services, IT consulting type of companies, and for them, time tracking is important. So Swift-Kanban does provide a very easy way to track the actual effort that a person spends on each card, and in fact, to a specific task related to that card. So yeah, that's something that perhaps you might want to take a look at. You're right that it is considered a burden by many organizations, and so I think as a lean Kanban tool, we try to make that as simple as possible, as opposed to some of the traditional time tracking, timesheet type of software that organizations have used, which make it very, very burdensome. So I guess we are at the end of our time here, Masa. So what we will do is take up any remaining questions, in the follow-up emails with you. As I've said earlier, the slides will be available for download, and the recording of the webinar will also be available. With that, I'd like to close the webinar by thanking Masa. Masa, it was a great talk again, and I think the interest in Kanban beyond software and IT, I think, is growing rapidly, I think, based on what we see in the market and what you're seeing as well. And I think yes, all of these sessions simply just make it easier for people to adopt Kanban. So thank you very much for your time today.
All right, thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you all, and we hope to meet you again on another session sometime soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.